order on the minutes, John?
Thank you. Mike, will you lead some prayer, please?
Most gracious and Lord, Father, this day. Thank you for all the ones who come out who come to visit this time. Ask you to bless these commissioners. They make decisions that affect the entire county. Christ, we pray.
You follow me to the pledge, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We appreciate everyone coming out this evening. We'll go right into the consent agenda, please.
Page 28, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull it for.
Okay. You want to make that one a motion?
Yeah, motion.
Okay, we have a motion, Commissioner McDaniels.
Second.
Have a second, Commissioner McLemore. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0. Let's go right into our public hearing. Mr. Attorney.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, we have two public hearings this evening. We've noticed in the local paper our first reading at our meeting on June 26th, and this evening we have our second reading and our public hearing. If I can, I'll direct the Commission's attention to the first ordinance that you have in front of you. It's been circulated, it's been on the county website, and it's been held by the clerk's office for public inspection as well. I'm going to read it by title, Mr. Chairman, if we then can open it to public hearing. It's an ordinance.
Mr. Attorney, if you would, because there's a lot of pertinent information in that, could we go with this and the other item, just maybe with a little bit more pertinent language that you see appropriate?
Okay. Be happy to. The title is an ordinance of the County of Gulf in the State of Florida amending nuisance ordinance 9906, providing additional language and further definition of nuisance as any activity conducted on a property within the county requiring the presence of law enforcement officers on 5 or more occasions of any 30-day period, providing for severability, providing for repeal, and providing for an effective date. There's a few whereas clauses that have been established by our subcommittee and vetted out by the Planning Board before they made the recommendation to you this evening. It is whereas the Board of County Commissioners find and determine that the Gulf County land development regulations and its regulations were intended to maintain and improve the quality of life for all citizens of the county. Whereas the Commissioners seek to preserve the public peace, community, tranquility, health, safety, and general welfare of all citizens of Gulf County. And whereas the Commissioners desire to amend, delete sections, subsections, paragraphs, subparagraphs, divisions, subdivisions, clauses, sentences, phrases, words, and provisions of any and all existing ordinance with regard to the definition of, quote, nuisance, or which have not been enforced or which are not enforceable, or which would be severable by a court of competent jurisdiction. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Gulf County, Florida find and determine that the Gulf County LDRs in Ordinance 9906 and their definition of nuisance is appropriately expanded to include additional clarification and detail to ensure, as recited above, and to maintain the quality of life for all citizens of the county, be it enacted by the Commission of Gulf, or County of Gulf in the State of Florida. Section 1, the amended definition of nuisance, Section 2G of definitions for Gulf County Ordinance 9906 is hereby amended to add subparagraphs A and B as additions to the definition of nuisance, which will read as follows. A, property or activity conducted on property within the county, whether owned, leased, or used by a person or organization, whether for a profit or not for profit, that requires the presence of law enforcement officers or emergency management services on their premises on 5 or more occasions within any 30-day period. B, owners of property or lessees, users or occupants of property that permit the existence of any illegal activities on such property that are prohibited by the laws of the State of Florida or the ordinances of this county require the presence of law enforcement officers or emergency management services on their premises 5 or more occasions within any 30-day period. Mr. Chairman, after that, there's Section 2, 3, and 4. Those are your standard repealer and severability and effective dates, and it's structured for the vote and a recommendation of the subcommittee that formed this with county staff and myself and Commissioner Smiley as your liaison. It was then presented to the Planning and Review Board last month, and it was a unanimous recommendation for your adoption of this amendment to our language of nuisance.
Okay. According to our policy regarding and I have one request on nuisance. I have one on homeless. We'll get to that one. Ms. Susan Watson, if you would come up on this ordinance, please, ma'am. Ms. Watson, I know you left your address on this, but could you state it for the record for the clerk, too, please? Thank you. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My address is 900 Lagoon Drive, Pensacola, Florida. My name is Susan Watson, and I'm the Northwest Regional Director of the American Civil Liberties Union, and I'm here today about the nuisance ordinance. These ordinances can have devastating effects on those individuals in most need of police services. In particular, nuisance ordinances may disproportionately affect victims of domestic violence, who often require police assistance due to the abuser's repeated conduct.
Ma'am, I had a request if you could speak into the microphone.
Can you lean over the mic? There you go.
I'm so very
It's
sorry.
okay.
Should I start over?
I don't think so.
It's fine, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I want my time. Okay. If a tenant knows that multiple calls to the police will lead to eviction, she may feel forced to remain silent to avoid homelessness. This means that a victim of domestic violence may not be able to seek police assistance when she faces abuse or needs to enforce a restraining order. Because chronic nuisance ordinances restrict a person's ability to access law enforcement and deprive individuals of a home as a result of seeking police assistance, they raise serious legal issues, including First Amendment and due process concerns. These ordinances may also result in discrimination based on domestic violence in violation of the Fair Housing Act and/or the Violence Against Women Act. Therefore, we oppose the amendment to the Ordinance 99-06. At the very least, we recommend that the Board of Commissioners further amend the definition of the nuisance to exempt law enforcement activity required by an innocent victim of any crime, or exempt law enforcement activity related to dating violence, domestic violence, sexual violence, or stalking, and to specify that property means individual apartments rather than an entire apartment complex. We further recommend that the board revise other sections of the nuisance ordinance to avoid implementation problems. The underlying ordinance targets issues that are easily corrected within the 15-day limit, for example, the removal of overgrown plants. Properties that require law enforcement presence on 5 or more occasions within a 30-day period do not easily fit into this enforcement scheme. Faced with such a short time frame, landlords may feel that their only option is to evict all tenants from the affected property. Rather than requiring a correction within 15 days, the ordinance should instead require property owners to provide a plan.
Hold on one second, Ms. Watson. Do I have a motion to continue? Got a motion.
Second.
Mr. Daniels, second. Mr. Yeager, any opposition? Motion carries 5-0. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Rather than requiring a correction within 15 days, the ordinance should instead require property owners to provide a plan for nuisance abatement within that time frame. Abatement plans short of eviction include providing security, communicating with tenants, and distributing fines. Finally, the existing ordinance specifies that citations will be issued if a violation continues beyond the 15-day period. It's unclear how this standard applies to properties classified as nuisance for requiring law enforcement's presence. For example, is a nuisance considered abated when there's no police activity within that 15-day period? That's all. Thank you for your time.
Any questions from the board? Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate that very much. Christy, did you want to speak now or when we go to the homeless section? You've got on the homeless section, you want to wait? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, if there is any other public comment before we turn it over to the commission for discussion.
Anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Any commissioners? I'll make the comment. Ms. Watson, we appreciate you coming, and I think like any regulation as we go through, one of the things that having the ability from a small county to work with law enforcement, and I know that Ms. Ashbrook's in the audience now with domestic violence groups, our ministerial groups, et cetera. I think just like any ordinance, we have the ability to take the issues that you've brought to our attention and monitor those and work with the group, and we certainly will take that seriously, working with those groups, working with the Sheriff's Department, et cetera, so that we don't have an unintended consequence in that area. But with that, I'll turn it to the board's wishes of the board.
Mr. Attorney, do you have anything else before we?
If I can, I just wanted to ask first if we could request Ms. Watson submit, if she's comfortable turning that statement in, so we can put that as part of the record. The second thing I would ask, the intent behind the subcommittee and the planning board as they went through this process is in conjunction with the other ordinance, obviously the much more substantial ordinance that you have there in front of you. So the amendment to the ordinance from 1999 for the definition of nuisance is expanding upon that. I think Ms. Watson made some valid points. It's something certainly for this commission and for the committee probably to take into consideration if they wanted to reconvene. One of the things that's not a completed process this evening is we had 3 issues that we had tackled per the county commission's direction, which was our homeless shelter. In conjunction with that, the expansion of the nuisance definition. And then the third issue that had come up was public property and parks. And that issue had come up before the subcommittee, and there's still a dialogue ongoing with that, and that'll be a third, presumably a proposed ordinance that comes before the planning board at a later date. So the subcommittee will be meeting again. We certainly can take those comments into consideration if we came back with an amendment to the nuisance, the chronic nuisance. But right now it is an expansion of what you've had on the books for the last 13 years, and the purpose behind it is to tie it in with the next ordinance we're going to be adopting. So if I can ask Ms. Watson if she can, not tonight, but possibly submit those recommendations to the subcommittee, and we'll certainly notify her of her next meeting date.
You can come back up, Ms. Watson.
Oh, thank you. It would be a great pleasure to submit it. It would be a great pleasure to submit it, and I would love to be able to participate. My only concern is that you don't have something that has unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
And turn around later. I can give this to you now, or I can email it to you if you'd rather have it in electronic form. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if we're ready, we, if it's time to move to adopt, I think we can move forward and adopt and let the committee take a look and make sure that that we cover all bases with that. So with that, I'll move to adopt.
We have a motion, Commissioner Yeager.
I'll second that motion.
Second, Commissioner Smiley. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, the second ordinance in front of you this evening for a public hearing, again, was noticed in the paper consistent with state statute. We had our first reading on June 26th, and this evening we're going to have our second reading and a public hearing for consideration of its adoption. If you all would look at the ordinance with regards to our homeless shelter, if you recall last fall, the commission under Chairman Yeager at the time had formed a committee, and we set out on meeting on several occasions and formulating some language. We've also attended some of the expert reports and meetings they've had in Bay County. We've attended Dr. Marbutt's reports. We've taken in consideration extensive national reports and studies. The subcommittee, with the liaison of Commissioner Smiley attending each of the meetings, and county staff, as well as our public committee members, we formulated a ordinance that you have before you today. It went before the subcommittee on 3 most recent occasions in May and June. It went before the Planning and Review Board and was unanimously recommended to you all for its adoption. If it's permissible, I'd like to read it by title and then maybe read 2 pertinent parts for the Commission's consideration. It's an ordinance of County of Gulf, State of Florida, to regulate and control the application, review, permitting process, as well as the regulation and annual evaluation of any and all homeless shelters, providing for the appropriate locations for such facilities, providing for the enforcement, adopting a hearing procedure, providing fines and penalties for enforcement, and providing for the repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. The first 2 pages are whereas clauses, Commissioners, and as you review them for many times over and you've discussed it one-on-one with me, obviously the major intent here was to provide a vehicle in Gulf County that if there was a facility to come, it would be a responsible measure and the proper step to take to provide a vehicle and a structure for smart growth and land use in Gulf County. As you have your LDRs and comp plan in place, a business or a land use comes before your county planning board and then ultimately comes before you. You have the discretion, as long as it's within your local laws, to approve or disapprove it. This issue, and specifically this unique use of a piece of property, had not been on your land development regulations. Last fall, under your direction, you had put the subcommittee to the task of formulating language that would provide them a fair and balanced vehicle to come before this county to create a facility such as this and be regulated by the county. The first 2 pages are whereas clauses where it assures public safety and the health and well-being of the county, as well as also providing a business such as this or a profit or not-for-profit an ability to come before you, go through the vetting process, file a permit application, meet with county staff, and then ultimately on the recommendation, once they met the burdens that are established in this ordinance, that they could all come before you all and make a recommendation to issue up to 12-month permit, no greater than, but up to a 12-month period. And as you turn to the 3rd page of the ordinance, if I can, there's several definitions. There's A, B, C, and D, and I'm going to skip over the whereas clauses but speak to the definitions. The homeless shelter is defined as a means, a facility intended to provide temporary housing to people in need and without homes. There's an exception under Section 9 for disaster response and hurricane and inclement weather for local residents if we have to provide shelters in Gulf County in the future, and that would be done in conjunction with emergency management. 2 is a person means an individual 18 years or older, a business entity or an organization or a governmental entity. That language was formulated by the subcommittee and the county staff after a discussion that we already have a facility in this community that provides some form of shelter to youth, and it has for a longstanding Mr. Taunton's program. So they wanted to establish that it would be adults that would participate in this program. The 3rd is a participant, which means an individual has qualified for admission into the shelter for temporary relief and assistance with basic necessities of life, such as food and clothing. A participant under the definition in terms of this ordinance, however, does not provide residency, nor, quote, the intent to reside status to an individual participating. The participant is an individual that receives the benefit of the shelter services, however, may not claim residency of shelter as a home, domicile, or residence. And the 4th definition, in terms of your land development regulations, as you define where we can put certain land uses throughout Gulf County going forward, there has been an introduction of the tourist corridor language previously in our waste management, and then most recently last year in the RV proposed ordinance, there was a tourist corridor definition. The subcommittee's come up with a definition of a tourist corridor in this ordinance that can be used obviously as a precedent going forward. The definition, it expands upon what we currently have in Gulf County, and I'm going to read it. The tourist corridor means a corridor is defined as the portions of highways, roadways, and public right-of-ways known, mapped, and designated in Gulf County as the areas defined below surrounding these portions of 98, State Road 38, County Road 38, State Road 30E, State Road 386, and State Road 71 within a 1-mile radius of these tourist corridors. We've defined the northwest corridor as U.S. Highway 98 for land areas within a 1-mile radius bound by County Road 386, heading south to the terminus at the intersection of U.S. 98 and Westview Boulevard. And Westview Boulevard is out by Sunset Village as you come into the Windmark subdivision. Any and all unincorporated areas between these two above segments along U.S. Highway 98 adjacent to Phase 1 of Windmark subdivisions and through Highland View. The second tourist corridor in Gulf County would be defined as the southern tourist corridor recommencing for all land areas within a 1-mile radius of State Road 30A, County Road 30A, heading south along State Road 30A from the intersection with the US 98 to the terminus of State Road 30A at the Gulf Franklin County border, and also continuing from the intersection of State Road 30A and State Road 30E and continuing west-northwest along the State Road 30E and State Road 30E terminus at the State Park. The third tourist corridor for the county would be considered and characterized as the Central Tourist Corridor, and is defined as any and all land areas within a 1-mile radius of County Road 71, commencing at the intersection of U.S. Highway 98 in the city of Port St. Joe and heading north to the Gulf County boundary line, as well as County Road 386, commencing at the intersection with U.S. 98 at the Gulf Bay County boundary line and to its terminus at the intersection with County Road 71 in the city of Weewahitchka. They have 3 definitions for tourist corridors. In your whereas clauses on the first 2 pages, one of the whereas clauses defines a viable and future economic driver for Gulf County being our tourist draw to Gulf County and being obviously one of the economic factors. Based on the whereas clauses in the ordinance, we've set out and defined what a tourist corridor is in Gulf County for purposes of this land use. If you would direct your attention to Section 4, which is the other section I wanted to emphasize for the Commission, the policy and the procedures taken by a permittee that comes to Gulf County asking for this permit would follow obviously the entire ordinance. Section 4 sets forth the criteria that they will need to establish for county staff before it's presented to you and given in full recommendation to your planning board and then after your planning board coming to you as a commission. And I'm going to review each of those qualifications for you so the public has an understanding as well. An applicant for the permit under this chapter has the burden of demonstrating each of the following elements. The proposed facility is appropriate for the shelter under consideration. The proposed location for the shelter is appropriate given proximity, for example, to schools and churches, etc. The shelter's participants will be provided basic necessities of life, such as food and clothing. Inclusive with this provision shall be the facility's required compliance with any and all state and local regulations for food preparation, distribution, and delivery to its participants, analogous to state public school requirements and/or state correctional facility food requirements. The fourth is the shelter's participants will receive any necessary medical treatment as provided by the facility's trained and licensed staff, and also a requirement of the subcommittee, as in our language, is that they adequate access to social services and other support services such as counseling for employment and permanent housing opportunities. The fifth requirement was that the shelter will provide transportation for shelter participants as may be needed to implement the shelter's program, particularly to an off-site location where services are provided. The sixth is the shelter will provide an adequate on-site supervision and security. Inclusive with this supervision shall be all participants provided a temporary participant card qualifying and identifying the participation in the facility's services during their stay. The seventh is the shelter's operating rules provide for immediate termination of a participant's services and provide an immediate plan for transportation out of the county of any participant who engages or alleged to have engaged in a criminal activity. The eighth is the shelter will provide adequate coordination with law enforcement department for the provision of screening and security functions. The ninth is the shelter will provide a community liaison to ensure sufficient avenues of communication with the neighborhood and an effective response to complaints from citizens in the vicinity. The 10th is inadequate law enforcement services are capable of being provided and are available. The 11th is the facility and the location comply with applicable provisions of the county's building and zoning ordinances. Inclusive with this compliance shall be the county's ability for random unscheduled inspections for continued compliance and safety precautions. The 12th is the applicant and its staff possess the requisite experience to properly manage the shelter, inclusive of the necessary and required medical staff to handle the needs of the participants. The 13th is the facility and its professionals submit sufficient plans demonstrating a structured discharge planning. We've made a reference to the most recent study that the committee and the expert reports have been provided with regards to the proper discharge plan of how do you structure a participant getting back into the community and rehabilitating them. That would include the rehabilitation, training, life counseling, and calendar for progression through educational or vocational endeavors to the participant. The 14th is the facility and its professionals submit self-sufficient plans demonstrating structured emergency evacuation, in parentheses, inclement weather, natural disasters, or emergency, and planning including Section 8 revocation below, providing for documented plans for relocation in lieu of a permit revocation. The 15th is the applicant is prepared to pay the permit fee described in Section 6. The 16th is the permittee must identify the agent of record for purposes of contact and communication. And the 17th is the permit shall comply with all state and federal guidelines in addition to the foregoing permitting review and conditions, and subject to Gulf County revocation power under Section 8 below for any and all violations issued by the state and federal guidelines. The last issue is Section 8, and I've referenced it a couple times in Section 4, is with regards to a concern that came up during subcommittee meetings in the planning board, which is if a permit was ever issued for a facility such as this and there's a revocation or a violation noted by the county, there'll be a due process hearing. The county would be obligated to notify them and certified, give them 10 days to come back before this county commission, try to remedy and provide a resolution to the infraction. If they're unable to do that within 24 hours, the facility would then revoke the permit. And part of this burden on the permittee would be to provide an evacuation plan or a relocation of the participants in the facility to another similar facility. Either it would be one that was permitted in Gulf County or another facility in the region. And that's defined under Section 8. We also, under Section 7, indicated that no homeless shelter shall ever be located within a tourist corridor within Gulf County, and we defined that tourist corridor earlier. Mr. Chairman, those are the areas I wanted to highlight for the commission and the public, and I'll turn it over to you for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. We have one request. Christy McElroy, would you like to come up, please? And if you would, give your name and address, please, for the record.
Christy McElroy, 1311 Woodward Avenue. And I know that this is the crescendo, and I've been a bit like water torture probably to most of you gentlemen. And so basically all I would like to do is to thank the commission and the county attorney, Jeremy. You've been really fabulous. Also, Dave, Michael, and Lee, and of course the county clerk. And then, you know, this started off over a year ago with the city, and there were many people that were involved. But as time went forward, you know, people became uninvolved. I know this has been controversial, and it certainly hasn't been easy. But I would like to thank Debbie Ashbrook and Libya Taylor and all my friends and my family. I'm sorry.
Fine.
And I'd also like to thank my detractors, because every journey should be about finding out more about you, yourself. And I think that's what I've done. And it's been a lot of research and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but it's been worth it. So that's all.
Thank you. Appreciate your words and certainly your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Christie.
Anyone else from the public would like to speak? I would like to take a second and just applaud the work of both our staff, Mr. Novak. This has been a challenge. It's been certainly a very controversial issue. I know the issues like Ms. Watson brought to our attention. Sometimes when we put these policies together, it's a working process, and we always have to come back. But this ordinance was brought, I think, in one of the most solid forms. You're talking 7, 8 months, a steering committee, research through it, both legal, et cetera. And I think Mr. Novak identified it correctly. If you come in for a housing development, a building permit, et cetera, the rules are absolutely clear in the process. When you deal with these types of facilities, I think people have a tendency to get lost in the ideology and the work or the process that's there versus the actual steps that you have to walk through. And the protocol is so clear. Everyone should know what the rules are. It doesn't matter if you're putting a 25, unit subdivision in or you're building this in. I think looking around the state, this was a big issue, as we've talked about with my current presidency with the Association of Counties. Rodney Long from Alachua County really put this on his horizon under his presidency, and there were a lot of good things done. But I think this ordinance incorporates that. I think our ministerial association, I think working with, the citizens that are there, and certainly Matt Scoggins, these people are good people. They're well-intended. They want to provide services both of a spiritual nature and both of a service, and those are great things. But under any certainly under government, we have to have some rules or process, and I think this does it. And with that, I'll turn it to the board.
Well said, Mr. Chair. I think, as I look at this ordinance and I look at the hard work that people put in, and very hard work, and because it was controversial, I think this is how government should work. It was a transparent process that they held committee meetings and posted those committee meetings. It's again the way that government should work. And so with that, I think we need to adopt the ordinance.
Any other commissioners?
Yes, I'd just like to say, working with the committee, we worked very hard to come up with it. And I think we did a very good job, and I want to tell everybody thank you for your time. At this time, I'd like to put a motion that we accept this ordinance.
We have a motion, Commissioner Smiley.
Second.
We have a second, Commissioner Yeager. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Attorney?
At this time, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's go right into county staff. Ms. Carey, anything from the clerk's office? Ms. Lynn? Houston?
Houston Whitfield, EMS Director.
Attaboy. I hear you.
Got me trained. Well, we had our EMS appreciation dinner last month, May. We made EMS week. And I have the bills here from it now, and I'd like to get them approved. The total is $639.27.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Got a motion, Mr. Yeager, second, Commissioner Smiley. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And I have an update from Bay Medical Center. They're going to give us a final word in the next 2 or 3 days, but it looks like they're going to negotiate with us.
Excellent.
Thank you, Houston.
Brett?
Yes, sir.
Deb? Mark? Mark, I don't know if you were here, but if you will, for the public, tell them what department you represent.
Mark Cothran, Gulf County Mosquito Control Director.
Thank you.
Okay, you dinged me on it last time.
That was kind of a joke, but I was just,
I took it personal.
okay.
Nonetheless, I was up here last time to tell you that we had just been dropped about 10 to 12 inches of rain, and it was going to be rough for a while, and it has been rough for a while. We've had large numbers of mosquito population increases in several communities around the county. We've had guys working lots of hours, and trying to keep it in check with what we have manpower here. I'm going over and above what I had budgeted for. It may play out, some of it may play out where I can cut back some in the next couple of months, to make it level out. But it's just a balancing act that I want you to be aware of right now, that I'm well above what I should be doing normal because of the storm. The other thing, the talk with Marshall entered a couple of things in the EM Constellation as of yesterday. We got I don't know if you know this or not, the federal government approved the public assistance for 20 counties in Florida, and Gulf is one of them. So tomorrow, Marshall and I have a conference call with Florida Department of Agriculture and DEP about what can possibly be done in vector control, and it would fall back under hopefully the 75% FEMA and the 12.5 for county and 12.5 state. And there'll be some cost incurred in that. If we do any kind of aerial applications, it'll be the most densely populated areas with mosquitoes. It won't be a county-wide thing because of the cost, but it can hit places like Dalkeith has a quantifiable increase of mosquitoes, way more than normal. Indian Pass is a place that, depending how the rainfall is, they get a lot of numbers, but they're way up as well, above normal. So we're looking at a lot of different options. Some of it's going to cost a little bit more money than what I have in the budget. I could bring that back to you. Just want to make you aware of it more than anything, the stuff we got working on.
Yeah, that's good. I've been working real close with Mark on this issue, well, every day, but Mark's doing a super job with this, and he's going to need our support to get us through it. So,
Yes, we appreciate
thank
your
you,
hard
Mark.
work.
Good job, Mark. David?
Hey, Richardson County Planner tonight. With your permission, I'd like for you to go ahead and take Keith McCarron for the DOT report.
Yes, sir.
Since
Come
he
on
lives
up.
in Tallahassee, and I'm sure he'd like to get home.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good evening. Keith McCarron with Appalachia Regional Planning Council. And I'm here to talk with you about the Department of Transportation 5-year work program. And there's a couple information items for you, and I'll just kind of briefly go through these and then, accept any input or questions you have. But Department of Transportation works annually with counties, cities, and the public to update the 5-year work program. And the Regional Planning Council assists in disseminating information and gathering input. And so I've met with your staff, Mr. Richardson, Ms. Kapinski, and they're always very informative about, the issues going on in the county. I do that prior to coming to tonight's meeting. And so the purpose of the meeting is just to, I guess, reacquaint you with the work program process, just in case that you were not aware that it's a fiscally balanced 5-year list of all the transportation projects in the state, and its purpose is to coordinate the long-term strategic transportation needs of the state. And there's long-range and planning documents that relate to all this, state transportation system. But the various funding sources are part of the Transportation Trust Fund, and the revenues that are going into that trust fund come from, like the state fuel tax, federal fuel tax, dock stamps in Florida go to that, and there are other fees like, with the toll roads, and some local governments have bond programs that all go to combine together to create the revenues for our transportation system, or the transportation projects in the work program. And the revenues are forecasted and we have planning methods that keep track of the funding coming into the fund. So at any point during the year, there could be adjustments in the dollars that are shown on the work program. And so I just wanted to just quickly, the document I've given you is the adopted work program, and it starts out with those fiscal years. It's 2013 is really this starting July 1 and through next June 30 is the state fiscal year. And so what we'll be doing starting now, we're also starting the update to add the next year, so that it goes through the state legislature in the spring, next spring. So just pointing out quickly, one thing that it's always helpful to look at are like where the big dollar construction projects are, because that tells you something's coming up this year. So in the 2013 column, State Road 30A has some construction work that's going to be happening if it's not already started. Could some of that culvert work had been going on, and then again in 2014 next year, we've got some continuing the resurfaced State Road 22, and we've also got the section between here and the Intercoastal Bridge coming up in 2014. And so that's just like an easy way to start to kind of navigate, through this. And then there's some of the acronyms there. If you see, crews out on US 98 this year, they're getting ready. They're doing preliminary engineering for resurfacing of US 98 that's going to take place in 2015. So this is just, again, how it, kind of navigate through the work program and feel like you're aware of, how these things are being phased. Because these construction projects obviously are planned years in advance because of the large dollar cost associated with them. Now I mentioned, you play an important role in the work program, and of course, further down the list, there are your local projects that get funded through various small county grant programs, and Ms. Kapinski and Mr. Richardson bring you different ideas, and those are listed on here, and I'm sure you've probably heard about those throughout the year. The other thing that you have applied for are what are called enhancement grant projects. Your different, like the America Stitch project that you reapplied for this year, and Pine Street, Beacon Hill multi-use trail, and then the trail project out on Cape Sandblast. Those are kind of important enhancement projects, and I've noticed that your staff is very, prepared to always submit, for those, and I commend them for that. I see you take advantage of these opportunities. And then you also have a community traffic safety team. So if there's safety projects, those are brought forward to DOT because, one of the main priorities of the DOT is safety. So they're always trying to immediately address that. The next priority is system preservation and maintenance, and then capacity improvements come third in some respects. Of course, we do have to keep up with our growth needs. I became aware that Gulf County submitted a letter to DOT this spring in March related to State Road 71, and I think that was really, good idea to start thinking about widening, what would be involved, and to start to get that on maybe appearing on the work program as an engineering task. You can see the first two projects. I wanted to, as I talked about State Road 71, I wanted to mention the Gulf Coast Parkway is on here. We don't know that process of deciding that corridor hasn't been concluded, but they are starting to think ahead for the preliminary engineering and right-of-way for that. And that's the first project on the list. And then right below that is Gulf to Bay Highway, and I know this has been a discussion between the county and DOT about what's happening with that. It's that next, extension of road back parallel with existing 98. And they ran into some permitting issues, and so there have been delays related to that, and there probably are some construction funding issues but it's my understanding they are continuing to work on the permitting issues and trying to figure out how to address the mitigation that's going to be involved with that. So at least there's some work on it, and you can see it is in the work program, and there's some work, some funding applied to that. Now, it only indicates $3,000 for preliminary engineering, but as I mentioned earlier about this program, the work program is very dynamic, and so as projects, they're always tracking the revenues coming into the state trust fund, and they have to always make adjustments, but some construction projects come in below cost, and so money rolls back in, and so, at some point during the year, since there's an entry for Gulf to Bay Highway, they may direct more money there to, direct their consultants to start working on it. So DOT has a range of different consultants that work with them, and they move them around to different priorities as funding comes or goes through the work program. So I hope that kind of explains where kind of we are and what we're looking forward to. I guess you may recall that also, I guess you have some Jared Daniels Road Phase 2 and County Road 30B, or some of the roads staff mentioned that are the county priorities, and obviously Regional Planning Council is going to be supporting those. And the other thing was the striping, road striping on Overstreet Road. We'll be trying to see if we can move forward as a safety project for that, and that may also be a county priority for resurfacing. Well, it is submitted this year, and you may have, recall earlier, I guess in the spring, that this was submitted. And there's also Old Bay City Road is another local priority that's been forwarded to DOT this year. So those projects may appear next year in the work program, and it just, hopefully we're getting back to where we are more we have a more steady flow of revenue. That's been, obviously, with the downturn in the economy and less traveling, we're relying a lot on gas tax and dock stamps with real estate. We've just been hit in a number of different ways related to transportation funding. Plus, the legislature has redirected some funding, sort of suspended some of the local grant funding for the small county programs to address other state needs. So hopefully, as just the revenues coming into the state increase, more funding will be directed to the small county grant programs, and we'll get back to a kind of a more steady flow of the revenues coming into the trust fund that keep these things, keep the projects, help possibly expand the list.
Okay. Ms. Shea, you have a question?
Yeah. Number one, Keith, we appreciate you coordinating all of this, and just wanted to make a couple of comments. Number one, we appreciate staff because they do stay on top of what roads we need to do, make sure we apply for all the grants that are available out there, and that's the key. One of the things that Small County Coalition, of which I'm a part, pushes every year is with the state is, continue to fund the small county assistant programs, the SCRAP and the SCOPs, the CIGPs, all those programs that we have to get our projects funding. So we appreciate that. DOT District 3 has been super to work with our staff and super to work with us on projects that they have come, monies that they have come available. As you said, some of these projects may come in under budget, so they adjust those things. And in 2015, just reviewing this in state and county projects, we've got in the neighborhood of $20 million worth of construction projects. So if any of that money comes available sooner, it'd be great to do that in a couple of different years and move that up instead of back. But it's always a pleasure to work with DOT. They're a great partner, and Keith, we appreciate you doing what you do.
Any other comments? I just want to just say again, I appreciate it, David. This is a lot to work and as we move forward. But you mentioned the Overstreet Road, and that, because of the safety issues, is certainly a high priority. And I know we're looking at widening, but the striping issues right now are just absolutely critical. You know, in that process. So that's one of the areas we're going. But we appreciate you coming and appreciate the update.
All right.
One thing, can we make sure too on the bridge? I can't tell reading it. It doesn't look like there's enough money in 14, but
Yep.
the replacement of that 22 bridge, it'd be a travesty if they resurface that
Right.
road and don't widen that bridge. But I
Yeah.
can't tell if it doesn't look like they've got enough money.
Yeah, that is a separate pool of funding, and we are aware of that, and I'll continue to bring updates to your staff about that. If it does depend on the rating. It's a statewide pool, and they are inspecting that bridge on a schedule. And I've talked with Mr. Richardson about the bridge inspection report, and so even though that's a state bridge on a state road, the county could still track, you know, its condition. Right now, it's determined to be functionally obsolete, but not structurally deficient. So, you know, but it's not as safe as a modern bridge, you know, is, I guess, the concern. And plus, you know, they're probably widening the cross-section of 22 as they resurface, or at least it'll be a, you know, a smoother surface and might increase travel speeds. And so what they can do, and I'll have to check into this, we did bring this to their attention, and they referred to its rating, and that District 3 really doesn't have control of that because it's a statewide pool. It's handled out of central office, and we just don't have enough money to statewide to handle all our bridge issues. So they take them as the worst ones first. And so I guess in some respects, fortunately, it's not the worst, you know. We want to get to it eventually. And so there could be things they could do with the existing, you know, it could be signage, but it could be the way the expansion joints are on the bridge, or things that would prevent people from losing control, or, you know, would otherwise improve the safety of it. And I'll make sure that we bring that to DOT's attention, that in conjunction with the resurfacing, maybe we should look at least safety, and then see if we can get some idea of how this bridge is scoring and when maybe it might be replaced.
Okay, thank you.
One more, Keith, thank you again for coming, but in reference, I knew it was left off the bridge when the resurfacing from county to 71. The bridge is sound, but the problem, it is so narrow, and they have a lot. They went out, I don't know if you travel 22, I traveled quite a bit, and it's well marked. You can get confused with all the marking they got there, but yes, it's extremely narrow for this day and time's vehicles.
Right, okay.
We're going to have to address it, we sure are.
Okay.
Thank you for
One
coming.
other thing, too, about the partnership we have with Tommy and all of them at District 3 is you know, that with C30E, the Cape San Blas Road is a state road, but our staff has worked great with finding grants to make sure that we do all that we can to make sure we're protecting that roadway, and the last amounts of money, some of the last amounts of money, DOT come through with some match. We found, our staff found a grant. I think the one found a grant. And
On the
DOT,
armoring, yeah.
that's right. DOT stepped up and did the match, and it's a great partnership that we have with DOT. So we appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
I'm going to jump to TDC with Tawana Jennifer. Do y'all want to come up for a moment, please?
Juan Kapinski, I want to talk to you as a grant writer first. To add to what Keith just said, when he and David and I met, one of the things, because Overstreet Road is such a safety factor, and the cost of the thermoplastic is extremely high, one of the things that I had asked him to possibly mention to DOT is maybe if they could paint it, you know, if they could give us the funding to paint it. That may last 4 or 5 years. I have applied for a scrap grant to widen and resurface it, at which time we would put the thermoplastic. But even if we could get paint striping on it right now, that would be much better than what we're looking at. I don't have the estimate with me. I apologize for that because I wasn't quite prepared for this tonight. But that was one of the things that I did ask Keith to see if they might be able to come up with the money to paint it, because that would last 4 or 5 years, and that may be something they could do soon.
Okay.
The next thing I have a couple of change orders here on my CDBG disaster recovery funds. One is on the phase of the stump hole, the phases 4 and 5 that we're working on. When we took bids, we actually had, on one phase, we had a little too much money, and on the other phase, we had not enough. And so what we're doing is doing change orders to just shift some of the money around. It'll end up being about the same linear footage that we'll be doing. We just got to do some from one pot and less from another. On the DRI portion, we're requesting a decrease, and this is change order number 1 with North Florida Construction. We're requesting a decrease of $50,100.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion, Commissioner Yeager.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Commissioner McDaniels. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
And then on the draft, which is phase 5, we are requesting an increase of $50,100.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion, Mr. Yeager.
Second.
Second, Commissioner McDaniels.
We went 50.
Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
And the last thing I have as the, for the grants, I got some good news yesterday for Commissioner McLemore. I talked to Tim Woody, and he was working on the Lands Landing boat ramp grant contract while I was talking to him. We should have that any day. We are actually in the new application phase right now. We can apply for another one. We have to have the application in by the 20th, which gives me 10 days, something like that, or so.
Say, would you repeat that?
We can apply for an additional one.
The Lands Landing, it's
That's
good.
actually,
Okay.
that's one that we
It's
were
a new one.
awarded last fiscal year, but then the funding was cut. And so they were trying to get some federal funds to be able to fund that project. And
The
they're
new
just
one.
now getting it.
the new one now coming up.
The Lands Landing. Now this new one is new state
Different.
money in
There
the
you go.
July 1st.
Okay.
So, my question is, do you want me to apply for another one? And if so, what boat ramp would you like me to apply for?
Gentlemen, we need to apply for another one. I've been fortunate enough, we've got mine at Odina completed, and we've got pretty much it settled at Indian Pass. We probably could do a few things at Indian Pass, but if y'all have one that you know of in your district that needs it, this is grant money. This is great opportunity to rehab some of our boat ramps.
I talked it over, I had a long talk with Mr. Twan, and we looked at all the boat landings throughout the whole county, and really the only one that we could come up with was Saw's Creek. Now, I don't know, do y'all have, Withers Landing?
I normally would argue for the Highland View with some expansion service, but I think when we talk about restore and some of the claims that we have on it, I think that could be entangled with that. So I think, I mean, I don't have a problem with that because I think Highland View's but rather than expansion there can be handled in other funding sources.
Here's the perfect one. The perfect one is Withers Landing, but we have an issue there. We don't have the long 25-year lease on Withers Landing, so we can't apply with that. And at this time, I would ask Don to go ahead and pursue that, Don. That 25-year lease with the St. Company on Withers Landing. It's been discussed, but it's never.
Why don't you go ahead and carry that as a motion?
So move.
Got a motion, Commissioner McLemore, second, Commissioner Smiley. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
They may can incorporate that in with the lease that we just.
Let's see.
That's the plan. That's their plan to incorporate with the existing agreement on
Odina. Okay.
Okay.
And we can do it.
But the only problem is we don't have the time now. She has to the 20th to get that grant applied. I would love to do Withers Landing, and that's the one that needs it, but.
Well, if Saw's Creek is the one that we think, isn't that in your district, Tan? Yes. I mean, if Saw's Creek is the one that we think we need to, let's. I mean, that's pretty well used. Unless Commissioner Mc.
Well, here's what you got. Here's what you have at Saw's Creek, and this is true. Saw's Creek, they have 0 public boat ramps now. 0. The only one being Saw's Creek area. We did have Dick's Landing, but we lost that fight with the hunters, and they closed that road on us. So the only public landing we have at Harris Creek area now is Saw's Creek.
Let's go with that.
So, it only makes sense if we had time to work this out with the St. Joe Company. Willis Landing is the perfect, but we don't have the time. So I would motion that we go to Saw's Creek. I don't know of any more. If y'all have any other suggestions, let me know.
That's fine. Let's, put that in motion?
Yeah, motion.
All right, got a motion, Mr. McLemore?
I second that
Second,
motion.
Commissioner Smiley. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Let me say one thing while we've got staff here and everything else. We got the voting improvement money that we did Odina with. I'm telling you, we got staff that can do anything in the world.
I agree.
We absolutely do. We can stretch dollars like never before. If you'll go down to Odina, you'll see the concrete boat ramp, you'll see a floating dock, and all that was done with less than $10,000. It's incredible what our staff can do. So you can certainly stretch these grant dollars a long ways, and staff does a real good job doing that.
I agree. Good job, Tom.
Yeah, I think we had a $95,000 grant for White City.
Did an awesome
And
job. It looks like
there's just all
a
kinds of
rock
stuff
star
over
out
there,
there.
so.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Commissioner McLemore was correct with the Willis Landing, but need to go ahead and get that, see if we can get that long-term lease, because that one's used in, I know in Commissioner Smiley's district, Saw's Creek. Probably the least used of our public boat ramps, but it needs it there. It'd be ideal if we can get Willis Landing. Willis Landing is highly used. Anyway, Mr. Butler.
I don't know, Mr. Butler and the attorney, you have 10 days. Is there any way we can pull it off?
I'll reach out to Jeff Stouffer tomorrow with St. Joe. The conversation was at the point where if this committee, and I discussed it with Commissioner Yeager this month, that you want to get Willis incorporated with that Odina and amend that lease, they just need to go before their investment committee, and I don't know if that's going to happen in a 10-day period. So we can ask the question and tell them our deadline, and we can certainly put it in front of them. We can do that tomorrow. And ask
Okay,
them.
do I need to?
Let me make this suggestion if you're comfortable with it. We've carried two motions
Exactly.
that I think get it, but I think if you wanted to make a third without repealing the second, with your direction, I would think that based on the time element, we keep those two. We're asking for the long-term lease. We're going with Saw's Creek. But if, in fact, you were to find the results, and it could be done within the 10 days, so we don't have to have a special meeting.
Then I would motion to go to Willis
So
Landing.
why don't you make that as
a motion to go to Willis Landing?
Okay, we got a motion. Commissioner McLemore?
I second that motion.
Second, Commissioner Smiley. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. Now, on behalf of the TDC, and I do apologize for not getting this in the consent agenda. I had to go out of town unexpectedly the first last week. I have a invoice number 5952 from Kerrigan Marketing Associates, and the reason that it's $892, but the reason I'm bringing it before you tonight is there was backup documentation that we were not able to regenerate from a year ago, interactive banners and things like that were placed on the websites. Some of the information we do have, I spoke with the clerk, and she said that if I provided her all of the emails regarding this matter, because it's been being discussed for several months now, way prior to my time doing the invoices. But she stated in an email that if I provided her with all of the email documentation and what we had and the invoices and the canceled checks, that she would pay this invoice contingent upon board approval. So I'm asking you to allow the clerk to pay this $892 invoice. It's for advertising expenses for the band for the, Forgotten Coast. Woo! Forgotten Coast Wounded Warrior Weekend last year.
So this is just an ongoing historical deal that they're still trying to work out.
Yes.
We have no more new work going with this carrier or this provider at this particular point, beyond the projects we approved at the last meeting, but that's it. We want to make that clear. And is this the last invoice of this processor, you still have a bunch more. Where are we with that clear out?
I do have some invoices that are in my office that are ones that I can sign off on, if you will. This one, I just was not comfortable signing off on this because it didn't have the documents that I would require to approve it.
Does it
And-
now have it?
Well, the clerk says that because it's a year ago and we can't regenerate
Does it
those
now have it?
documents. For my signature?
Yes.
No, sir.
Okay.
All right, wishes
I
of the
mean,
board?
I have
wanna make motion to deny?
emails here, from the company that, or from Dockside Cafe. They're the ones that actually did this advertising. And then Kerrigan paid them, and now Kerrigan is asking us to reimburse them.
Mr. Attorney, have you seen this particular?
I have, and actually looked at that packet that Tawana was reviewing, and she indicated they have some of it. And if I can make a recommendation, they have substantiated a portion of that invoice and showed, demonstrated, I think, the advertising run rates and the web hits. And I think maybe 40 or 50% of that invoice has been backed up. The other half of it, they still are without. So it would be my recommendation that at the very least, you could take what has been substantiated and provided for, pay that, and pay, it's an equitable resolution to it to pay for that portion of the invoice that's been documented for the advertisement. The portion that hasn't been, hold that back.
Okay. So move for whatever is documented that they've done to pay on the invoice. You got the documentation for it?
I'll second that, but strictly what's documented.
We have a motion, Commissioner Yeager. We have a second, Commissioner McDaniels. Any discussion?
Yes, Tawana,
Yes, sir.
is that the last invoice?
No, sir.
But the invoices that she has now, she feels comfortable with signing off on. Is that correct, Ms. Tawana? That
I
you-
will before I sign off on them. If I don't, they will come to you. Yes, sir.
I know that.
I'm
but-
reviewing them, yes, sir. When I started doing the invoice approvals, there were some items that Kerrigan Marketing was continuing because of contracts, co-ops with Mexico Beach, and some things like that. I think there were 3 or 4 of them, if I'm not mistaken. And then there were 6 new items that were approved at the request of TDC Chairman Warner a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago at the board meeting. Those things I'm comfortable with because I know exactly what they are and exactly how much they are. Some of the older ones I do have questions on, but I'm getting answers to those questions, and when I'm satisfied that they meet all the requirements, I will sign them and submit them.
All right. Listen, I guess we need to make the direction clear. We've gone through this for months, and we spent an enormous amount of time. We've pulled you away from the grant writing, and thank goodness that Jennifer's here, and you've done unbelievable work. But like these 6 new things that came up, we made it very clear that we are done with Kerrigan Marketing. No new projects, that we talk about, but yet we've got 6 new on. I want it to be very clear to the TDC that he doesn't represent the county, he doesn't represent the TDC. He can certainly apply for things of there, but I cannot sit and go through this game of, we got invoices that are over a year old. We've gone through predecessor sitting there saying, is it 15,000, is it 115,000? It is like a mystery box of what's over there. And I know it's not your fault, and Jennifer, I know it's not your fault, but this is absurd. And I feel like we continue to go through this, and we're trying to figure out how much we owe him. That's his responsibility to work back through on that invoice. If he can't produce the information and the clerk's not comfortable with it, we don't pay it. I mean, it's just that simple. If it was done and it was done in good faith, we need to pay it. I mean, it's that simple. But I think I think you should hear us very, very clearly that we're done. The stuff needs to follow our bid process. It needs to go out for bid. If the gentleman applies and wins the bid, great, okay? But this going backwards and then this ongoing, never-ending agreement we seem to have with him is done.
Those are the only things that I'm not clear
Okay.
on.
Well, Jennifer, please do
I'm
not bring
clear
anything,
on
at
those.
least from my opinion, please do not bring anything to this board with Kerrigan Marketing on it, okay? Unless he's gone through a bid process and he's won that bid. I am not, as the chairman of this board, going to continue to play cat and mouse. We'll try to figure out how much we owe. Done. So anyway, enough preaching. We've gone through this. We've carried the motion. Is that correct? All right, we had a motion. We had a second. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
That's all I have.
Thank God.
Just on that part. Just on that. Here you go.
Come on down.
Come on, baby.
Jennifer Jenkins, Gulf County Tourist Development Council. I'm going to bring good news. May bed tax collection had just shy of a 21% increase.
Good job.
The last 8 months.
You did it.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
There you go.
In June, when the June numbers come in, I hope that I can say I contributed. Since October, 6 of those 8 months showed increase, only 2 had some slight decreases. So it's encouraging. We had, yesterday, we had our first partner workshop at the Welcome Center in regard to the sponsorship and special funding program. We had some nice turnout. I think we had some good, clear discussion. And so those applications for the sponsorship and special funding are due July 20th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time at the Welcome Center, or the TDC. Also, on partnership, the TDC worked with the Chamber, and yesterday we filmed 5 segments for WEAR TV. The TDC will be a destination sponsor. There were 5 segments promoting Gulf County tourism, and that will be on WEAR for the website for a year, and some special segments in and around July and August. That is one of the programs that we purchased through Kerrigan Marketing, so there will be a bill for that, okay? Also, we did a 3-minute segment on Beach TV, which was also purchased through Kerrigan Marketing, so we will receive an invoice on that. And that will be on Beach TV all the way through Pensacola for a year. So those segments also negotiated to use those segments and put them in the Welcome Center on our website or wherever else we can. So we actually own those segments as well. Okay. And finally, sometimes good news does come from talking to reporters during tropical storms, because through Tropical Storm Debbie, I pitched our scallop season to an Associated Press reporter, and she will be here Thursday, and she'll be doing a feature article on Gulf County and our scallop season. So I'll push to get national pickup on that, and that's all I have.
Jennifer, first again, I know you've inherited a lot of this, and understand our frustration is yesterday. We really are, and certainly myself, excited about the new board, the way it's been sort of re-engineered, the clear process, the protocols. You know, I know that you guys had a workshop the other day on all the funding requests. I don't think we'll ever have to go through this, so please don't mistake my frustrations with this going through. But this has been a train wreck for us to go through, and we just don't want to do it anymore. We want to go forward. Your leadership has been awesome with what I've seen. You've done yeoman's work with everything. So make sure you just understand, but the board need to give you, I think, clear direction on that as we go forward. The second thing, and I'm not going to jump to restore, I'll wait till we get there on restore, but part of what we've been championing for with the counties, et cetera, you know, obviously now has been signed into law, and I need the board's permission, and I can sit down with you and explain. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but, you know, working with Barry and working with Jennifer will be very important. I mean, and let me say on the outset, most people don't know what restore is, even though we've been talking it for 2 years, but most people don't realize what it is. But once it actually starts coming to fruition, everybody will come out of the woodwork, just like they did with BP, to be in this process. This process, by federal law, will be controlled by the county commissions of the 8 respective counties and the others that fall back with it. But we need guidance in a lot of things. For example, you know, I'm sure, you know, folks are going to say, well, it should be spent on tourism. We're not buying billboards. We're not buying marketing ads, but destination points and changing. And you've talked to me about city branding and county branding. Great, I think, ideas. Convention centers, things of that nature. Those are very, very good. We talked about the port, and very, very good. But I think we need to set the rules of engagement and how we work with the community and sort of dust off our strategic plan and talk about these dollars that are forthcoming so that we have a very clear direction, and your leadership is very necessary in that. So if I can, with the board's permission, ask that we appoint her and Barry to begin working with me and Mr. Butler to get it framed, and then we'll set the structure and come back for y'all's guidance if we can get that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I have on my agenda here tonight to talk a little bit about is the Restore Act. The monies are coming down, how important it is to make sure that we get the biggest bang for the buck. So I think that's a beginning and that's a start, and I'm supportive of that. Sure.
A motion, Commissioner Yeager.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Mr. McDaniels. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0. I'll get back with you and Barry, and we'll start working on it.
Okay, may I just say one more thing? In regard to any outstanding invoices that we have on our desk with Kerrigan Marketing or any of the program that goes through the end of September, we drafted an email to him today. I know how to look at the media invoices, and if there were any discrepancies or questions, it just came through my email, and I'll review it tomorrow, and I'll discuss it at our budget meeting tomorrow as well. Just so, I mean, I have a list of them. I know how to read them. I know how to look for what I'm supposed to be looking for. I've asked for the number of insertions, if any surprises I might have through September 30th, and it just came in actually, but I didn't have a chance to look at it. All right, and that'll be discussed tomorrow at the budget meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, where were we going? I'm thinking to David, anything? Michael?
Jack of all trades, master of none. On the jail side, just a couple attaboys. Mark and I are not good to negotiate with the unemployment compensation folks because we're 0 for 2 on our last two. Jeremy and Brett won one. We got notice this morning. So that's a good guys win. When you fire somebody for stealing or you fire somebody for bringing in dope or committing felonies, they shouldn't be able to draw unemployment. So I think we've got the right team working on it now, so that's good. One more attaboy to the old dentist and the new dentist. We had a lot of problems over the long holiday weekend at the jail and administration too with computers, and the night of July the 3rd and Saturday during the long weekend, they both came out and fixed our problems that we had. So doing us a great job, but even though one of them only works just a little bit for us. That's all.
Mr. Attorney?
Mr. Chairman, first issue, last month there was, you had addressed the Windmark Phase 1 signage issue with regards to public access to the beaches. I've had the opportunity to meet with St. Joe Representative, Mr. Caldwell, on 2 occasions. He's been very helpful. He's had dialogue with both his board, the association, and some of the residents in Phase 1 to address the issue. If you recall, back in the spring, they had put up some signage. We had, the commission had sent a letter asking them to remove the no trespassing signs because it was in conflict with the interlocal and the DRI. After that, there was additional signs that went up, and we had addressed the issue with Mr. Caldwell. We've come up with a proposed resolution. It's a tentative resolution. I'm going to circulate an aerial just for the commission's review. Right now, they're proposing 24 additional 20-foot parking spaces along the deceleration lane on Windmark Beach. After you pass the entrance to Phase 1 in Windmark, on the left-hand side, the Gulf side, they would stripe 24 additional parking spaces for public parking and access. And then also at the north end, the west end, and the southeast end, they would put signage up directing pedestrian traffic on how to access the beaches from those additional 24 parking spaces. So this has been vetted out on their side. I've discussed it individually with some of the commissioners as well as the administrator. So tentatively, this would be a proposed resolution and a solution to the direction of the commission during our June meetings.
Well, you know, you guys have heard me, I guess, pontificate a little bit on this issue. This is a big deal related back to the DRI and public access to those boardwalks and to those piers. And this started, as you indicated, with the signage issues and going through. I think I'm looking at this. There's a couple of issues. I think that this can be worked, Jeremy, to the benefit where we do have safe pedestrian parking. I think that there are some legalities that I would like for you to look into. Mr. Butler, if I'm not wrong, that portion of 98 in the DRI was supposed to be turned back over to the county as well as the St. Joe Shores area. That has not been transacted to my understanding. So they, at this point, St. Joe Corporation still owns that. And the same problem with the St. Joe Shores area. We've got parks at the end that belong to the county. They do not belong to the St. Joe Company at the end of this road. To make this happen, I think there's a couple more moving parts. That road needs to be transacted, Mr. Novak, and get that into the county's domain in the process. So I think we can do that because, looking at this deceleration access, and they're required, is it 300 public parking spaces? And obviously they'll deduct that into the process. Jennifer needs to look at that. I don't think that's a problem because they're not even close to that at this point. But I think this is a viable compromise where we can get pedestrians down there with not an undue hardship to those docks and to those access points. So I appreciate St. Joe working on it, but if you could look at that other issue, then I think in our next meeting we could try to put this one.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just note, they have 120 of the 300 pledged so far. One thing they did want to emphasize, just so it's noted for the record, these are not permanent spots. They would then be transitioned into the future 180 that they've obligated and banked for the rest of the development.
I'm not comfortable without a permanent dedication. I mean, if it's the county road and we take the right-of-way, that'll exclude that.
It would.
The issue here is that St. Joe controls the homeowners association, and the homeowners have to deal with their values, et cetera, and we want to compromise and work with that. But, 6 months from now, they could change that, and we're right back where we started. So something has to be codified in an amendment, some kind of, et cetera. So
and we'll continue that discussion, Mr. Chairman. I would just ask one question, which is,
go ahead.
If you're going to take to 24 spots at this time, and they're temporary spots, if they deed over that portion of the deceleration lane on 98, it immediately becomes the county road. At that time, then those spots obviously are still accessible, but they're county spots. They wouldn't count towards the 300, and they'd have to find them elsewhere. So this is a temporary resolution until they find the other 180 parking spaces.
Well, there's a difference between a temporary scenario until we get the property and we own it, et cetera, and giving them credit for it versus them changing as soon as I get out of office. I do not want people to have to walk from that park to those boardwalks. And so we need this done, and whatever legal language you need so we can do it. But once we get control of the road and they're willing to put the spots there, et cetera, then we can work with them.
All right.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anything else?
The animal control ordinance is our subcommittee we're working on right now. We had introduced it last month. Commissioner McLemore had joined us. We had provided that to the Humane Society and some public input. We also had Roland attend the meeting and a copy of the ordinance as well. We're going to be scheduling and noticing another meeting through the clerk's office coming up towards the end of this month so we can reconvene and start to, crystallize the language in that animal control ordinance that we'll then bring before this commission, ideally next month, depending on when that subcommittee can to get it down. But right now, I just wanted to update you all. We'll be meeting again. With regards to Mr. Spellman and our countywide and our redistricting issues, you had all instructed Mr. Spellman to work on the issue with regards to redistricting, validating, and the proper submission to the federal court of the recent redistricting we just did after the 2010 census. We have engaged him per your authorization back in May. I've been in discussions with him of when he can come down. I provided him the commission dates. He's in South Florida on mediation and some federal appearances during our commission hearings. So what we've done is I've talked with the administrator and the chairman, and we've tentatively scheduled a special meeting date, if it's possible, for July 30th at 9 a.m. here in the commission chambers. At that time, Mr. Spellman will make his presentation and his report, and it will obviously be noticed and open to the public.
Go ahead and make a motion for a special meeting. We'll go ahead and say
Yes, absolutely. We need to hear that, hear what he has to say.
motion.
So moved.
Commissioner Yeager.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Commissioner McDaniels. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, I anticipate Mr. Spellman submitting a written report. I don't know if it'll be the day he appears. If it is in advance, I'll circulate that out to the commission and get you all a copy, as well as give it to the clerk, a summary of his report that he comes in with. The next issue I have is with regards to landfill. There's delinquencies on invoices. Mr. Danford had provided those to me at our last meeting. Without coming to the commission, asking for authorization to pursue those through collection practices and if necessary, instituting a filing complaint, seeking a judgment. We've contacted them all by telephone. I've spoken with them each individually, let them know that obviously we're going to institute the collection practice, but proper county policy is we cannot institute any kind of legal action without the commission's authorization. So if you all would, we're going to issue them a collection notice, fair debt collection practice, make sure it's a compliant notice. They're all on notice verbally now. I've spoken with them each individually. They're all over a year old in delinquencies, and we'll start that collection practice after giving them ample time, say 10, 14 days to pay that balance to the county. But I would need that authorization from the commission before we move forward.
Wishes of the board?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion, Commissioner McDaniel, second, Commissioner Yeager. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Ms. Lanier has a resolution prepared. I'm going to read it by title and ask for the Commission's adoption of this evening. It's a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners, Gulf County, Florida, authorizing the county to proceed with this submittal of an application for state funds under provisions of Chapter 161091, Florida statute, to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Beach and Coastal Ecosystem Management for the Florida Beach Erosion Control Program budget for the fiscal year of 2012 through 2013 for the restored and subsequent renourishment of the St. Joe Peninsula beaches. It is set up for the chairman's signature. And I believe this is just, Ms. Lanier, this is a renewal for the renourishment program for MRD for the coming year. Okay.
The agreement is on page 8 to 12 of the consent agenda that you approved tonight. The resolution was inadvertently left out of the consent agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion, Mr. Yeager.
Question.
Second. You want a second for discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Attorney,
Yes, sir.
did I hear you correct, said it was restricted to the peninsula?
St. Joe.
Correct.
Yes, sir. That's
Okay.
correct. It's St. Joe Peninsula beaches.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, while the attorney's talking about the beaches and all, can we get Michael Dombrowski with our MRD, the coastal engineer that we use, to take a look at what the feasibility would be? You know, we are real close on getting that FEMA deal done, I think. Don and I has met, Congressman Sutherland and them have met again with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I believe that's fixing to happen. But we've talked a little bit about, instead of pumping that sand from offshore, some compatible sand to haul in there, and then you're not just using the same sand, you're adding sand to the system. So can you, if the board doesn't mind, let Don contact Michael Dombrowski with MRD and talk about the feasibility of using inland sand source for that program.
Okay, we got a...
I'll put it
in a motion, Commissioner Yeager.
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Smiley. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I have one other item to report on, is the Public Works Building. Last week, we met with the contractor, Cathy Construction, and his representatives, and the administrator, the clerk's office, Lee, Joe, myself, met with Mr. Cathy to review the completion of the change orders for the Howard Creek phase of the project under the contract, and then the subsequent relocation of the materials and the proposed new project here in St. Joe. We've reviewed the change orders submitted by Cathy Construction, and I've spoken with Lee this afternoon, as well as Mr. Cathy, of what was submitted after that meeting. The first order of business, the clerk's office noted that there was some waterproofing on the Howard Creek project. It was the only thing that was not added to your change order, and that needs to be ratified and approved. Everything else that had been done on the change order had been, but the commission did not include the waterproofing in its last vote, I believe over a year and a half, 2 years ago. So if we can, for the clerk's office, so they can release that final retainage, I'd ask for you all, it's $845 for waterproofing, but it was not included on the minutes, and I do not believe it was recorded in the actual motion, so if we can do that tonight.
Okay. So move on that recommendation.
Motion, Commissioner Yeager.
I'll second his motion.
Second, Commissioner Smiley. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, the second portion of that meeting, we had requested a breakdown specifically for the Howard Creek phase, so we could close out, and the clerk could close out the books and consider that phase one before you relocated the project to here. We received a change order noting everything that had been done in the Howard Creek project, and at this time, I would ask if there's we have completed and obviously cleaned up with regards to the waterproofing, is authorization for the release of that final retainage on that project, which was 10% held back.
So move for the recommendation, Mr.
Motion, Mr. Yeager.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Mr. McDaniels. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. The last thing we had requested the contractor at the meeting, and there was considerable input from the county staff, was to determine, with regards to the relocation, the materials that were brought down to the site, and what would be the final contract price through an amendment and a change order to complete the project here in Port St. Joe. We have a change order from Mr. Cathy. We've reviewed that, provided it, and Lee's looked it over. There's still some numbers that need to be worked out, and so at this time, we would table that until we come back in 2 weeks and present to you, ideally, the final figures on that change order. Lee ideally can be here to speak towards those numbers and have you ratify it, at which time I would ask you then for permission to do an addendum to the contract to encompass both the change orders you've already approved and the new change order for the relocation and the new materials for the project.
So you need a motion to table, or?
At this time, I just wanted to give you an update, and like I said, we'll come back and I'll provide you all with a change order number at the next meeting, presumably.
Okay.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I have nothing else.
Thank you. Mr. Butler?
Chairman, Don Butler, County Administrator. My first item is HCP, the Habitat Conservation Plan proposed contract. Myself and the attorney and Mr. Yeager met in Panama City with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and others, FWC, and we got them to agree again that we don't have to pay a local match on this project. It's a $416,000 project. They're going to be kicking money in at this year. It's going to be $266,000, and there'll be some local match through them to be added to that. Next year, it'll be an additional contract. But my recommendation to you is to allow the chairman to sign this contract between the Gulf County Board of Commissioners and Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, contingent upon the attorney making sure that we've got everything tied down. But it's a long time coming. It's a year and a half, 2 years in the makes. And they finally agreed that our original agreement was that we didn't have to pay any money out.
Yeah. So moved, Mr. Chair. That was a little bit of battle that, they didn't understand that we were broke. And so now they do.
Motion, Mr. Yeager.
I second.
Second, Commissioner Smiley. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, this is just a report on health insurance. We don't have a recommendation for you tonight. The committee met last week, and we really don't feel, a week before last, we don't feel good about the upcoming numbers on health insurance. Look like the preliminary numbers is a 29% increase over the current year.
Yeah.
So, but to give you an idea of what we're looking at, we're, number one, the impact of feasibility of breaking off constitutional officers into small groups, and you can get some better rates with small groups. And it doesn't mean we're going to do this. We're looking at the numbers when they come in. The idea of self-insurance, we're looking at the experience results of HSA versus traditional plans. If we just went straight HSA with everyone, we're looking at a low-cost plan, a 50-50 co-insurance, which no one likes that, but we're trying to look at the numbers. A contribution strategy, more of a county issue, more of a political county commission issue than it is an insurance issue about what's the contribution by the board to each individual or family coverage. And also we're looking at, hopefully we'll get some good here, pricing concessions from Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and United Healthcare. See if they come off those numbers they submitted to us. That's in the works. Hopefully next board meeting we'll have something in front of you to look at. Doesn't look good anyway we look at it. Next item is TC Assistant Director. We was waiting until we got the director in place, and Jennifer has worked up on job descriptions and got a job description for the Assistant Director that looks like will work and fit her plan. And so we made contact with Kim Bodine with the Workforce Center to search for someone for the Assistant Director position. So we got it. Hopefully it'll be posted tomorrow on the Workforce Board site. We will continue to take application until we get a good application. And so it's open-ended, and we'll just do like we did last time.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Bobby, Sheriff's Office? All right, we'll go to Mr. Mack.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brian.
Brad Price, Fire Coordinator. As you know, we recently went out for bids for pagers, and we did receive one bid back, and I make a recommendation that we buy the pagers from that bidder at 80 pagers.
What's the dollar amount?
The dollar amount is $30,000, but we got $11,000 from impact fees, $11,000 grant money. The fire departments will have to come up with $6,000, and we have that in our budget.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Mr. Yeager, second,
Second,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
McDaniels. Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. McLemore.
I'm good, Mr.
Mr. Miley?
I'm good.
Wow. Mr. Yeager?
I'm good. I've covered my two.
I'm gonna let you slide. I'm good. Other than my page 28.
You want to go ahead and cover page 28?
Yeah, let's do, please.
Yes, sir. Okay. Let's go ahead and take page 28 that was pulled in the consent agenda. Go ahead, Mr. McDaniels.
Give me just a minute. Forget. Mr. Chairman, I address Major Blair here, please. Major, if you would, this is in reference to a triathlon be held here out on US 98, apparently in St. Joe Beach. We had one, what was this, maybe 6 months ago, and I know there was some, 3 months ago, and
It wasn't long.
no, and I know the sheriff and this Miss Olga, what's her name? Moore.
Seymour, maybe? Seymour?
Anyway, there was some, little bit of conflict. Has that been worked out? All right, this is a for-profit organization.
I don't know if they're for-profit or not for-profit.
Somebody makes money off of it.
Well, I mean, you can have organization fundraising with it. What directly is your question, Mr. McDaniels? What
My
was it?
question is that from the prior, they're asking that the sheriff's department provide them with or traffic control. Am I correct there?
Yes.
And are you going to do that this year?
I've requested you wait till the sheriff is back and clear it through him because he said no.
Okay.
If I may,
Yeah, go ahead,
right
sure.
now, if I can make a recommendation, this event has been historically, I know it's gone probably most of the time I've been elected, but this is a public safety issue with the sheriff. I know it's a large friction point. Why don't we, with your permission, let's keep this pulled, but direct it over to Jennifer with TDC and have her work with the sheriff's office and give us a recommendation. We can address it next meeting.
Fine with me. Fine with me.
All right. All right, I just have a couple things. One that we talked about with the Restore Act. You know, I've been talking this language with Commissioner Yeager and I and this board for seems like forever and more. But for the public's purposes, it was passed into law. That is an enormous, enormous piece of legislation that I'm telling my fellow commissioners and certainly the public that will never happen again in anyone's lifetime sitting in here. We have an opportunity to literally change not only this county but the regional components of all of the Panhandle counties. The federal law does some great things. Number one, as I said before, it takes those 80% penalties of the Water Pollution Act and brings those to the 5 affected states. If this bill had not been passed as part of the transportation bill, those dollars would have flowed directly into the U.S. Treasury. So we've got state formulas and agreement between senators and House members, and I want to say again that Congressman Sutherland, as the conferee, has really led the charge on this. Senator Nelson, as a conferee on the Senate side, has been a champion for this. Doesn't matter if you're an R or D, this issue is unbelievable for this Panhandle, for the state of Florida. Basically, where the timing of this issue now rests is with the Department of Justice in a settlement with BP. These dollars could flow very fast if there's a settlement with Judge Barbary and an agreement with him. It could take years if it goes to legislation, but the law now gives those formulas there. The most incredible thing that this board and many boards have suffered through is that just like stimulus, again, doesn't matter if you're an R or D, those monies had been going to the governor's office. We, through the Association of Counties, a small county coalition, have been lobbying this very hard. But one of the things we did was that these dollars come directly to the counties. Folks, that's a big, big deal. And, you know, this board, by federal law, will have control and oversight of how these dollars are to be spent. Now, saying that, there's a lot of moving parts. We want transparency. We've got to work with the governor's office. We need to work with the federal body. But the reason I talked to earlier about with Barry and with Jennifer, you know, there's going to be everybody and their brother come out of the woodwork. This is going to be just like BP, and everybody's going to have a shiny nickel. The Florida Association of Counties will keep the 8 counties on board. This board needs to keep the county involved. This is not TDC money. This is not EDC money. This is Gulf County money by federal law comes through here. We need those strategic partners. We need the alliances. We need to take off that strategic plan and start rolling this out. And, you know, for example, in TDC, we're not going to pay, as I said earlier, for billboards and things, but if we started looking at convention centers and working with the city on the Centennial Park, a lot of people have talked to me about that. I know Bill Kennedy's got great aspirations with the recreational complex over there. These are the kind of projects and viability that I think, Mr. Butler, if you'll put on the city-county agenda that we need to talk about. And I've reached out, not to this mayor, but to the other mayors that we're working with, and we'll get with Mel as well. But, you know, we've got the meeting next week to continue. So counties have already agreed to a funding formula of how these monies, and there's 4 particular pots, the 35%. But to give you an example, and Senator Nelson discussed this the other day, but this penalty can be somewhere between $5 billion and $20 billion. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. And it depends on the culpability and the negligence related that Judge Barbary and they all come up to. But it's per barrel of oil that was spilled into the Gulf over that period of time. And that's why those estimates are so varied. It just depends on how they scale that. But if you had a $10 billion settlement and you bring those dollars down in that first pot of money, you're talking about $700 million that comes to the 8 counties. And by federal law and by state law, coincidentally, there's a state law that drives 75% of this to the 8 affected counties. So those monies are going to be coming directly to us. Our goal is to be working with the governor's office, DEO, and all those folks to have a template as we build this economic profile for the county. So when you hear all this stuff, we're not doing anything with economic development, you need to pay attention. This has been an unbelievable task of what's been delivered through a lot of work by the commissioners here and the commissioners that we serve with throughout the state. But we have an ability here, but I'm going to be moving with Jennifer and Barry and any of your appointees or anybody you want to appoint that we do it. But we need to understand what the rules are, how it's going to roll out. But this literally will be the largest thing that will ever change Gulf County, I believe, as we're talking about. Because loose numbers, we're talking $40–50 million coming into the county. And how we spend that, how we jumpstart. And the amazing thing about the Restore Act is it gives money both on the economic development side. You know, the Republicans in the House did a great job of pushing that. The Ds did a great job of pushing the environmental side. So to me, there's an awesome balance that has been created where we've got 5% of this will go into the oceanographic components of it, looking at the long term. So we're going to have centers of excellence where academic and research centers are tied in as well. They've mandated that it flows to these Florida centers and not a college from Rhode Island or California. So this is a piece of legislation that I would tell everyone in the audience, you need to thank Senator Nelson and Congressman Sutherland for him to be a freshman congressman and to be put by Speaker Boehner on a conferee is amazing. And for it to come out of transportation when they can't pass their names is more amazing. So keep this in line, but understand to the public as we form this, we're going to be working with a varied structure of varied stakeholders, but I do not want this county to get into a food fight that happens all the time. This is not a TDC issue, a chamber issue, it's a county issue. And what I mean by that is it's all of us. But this board sits by federal law as the decision-making body. Even though it'll be post my term, we will set a structure that will last through this entire process as it hands over to you guys and to the new commissioner that replaces me. But anyway, I applaud Jeremy, Don, this board, the county for allowing us to go to Congress and testify and spend money. I hear all the time of garbage out there about going places. Had we not fought for this, we would not be sitting here today with these kind of things. And you can ask Senator Nelson, Congressman Sutherland, when you go and sit in front of 10 senators and 15 House members and things, you have to be where the piñata is. So I appreciate this board doing that. I appreciate the public indulging in that, because now we're going to see the dividends that I think will put Gulf County literally on the roadmap. So great news to the public. And one other quick thing, we already covered the Windmark issue. I'd like to have Lee go out and look at the walkovers with TDC. I got people willing to pay for it if we'll just assume the liability, but we need to take care of some of the walkovers out there at St. Joe Beach, so I'll work with Lee on that. And then you guys had asked me to chair the DOH review committee. I just want to bring an update on that. I got the information from Mr. Butler on a couple of appointees that you guys wanted. We have sent letters. We have representatives from DOH. I spoke with Dr. Curry. He will serve. Roger Hall will serve. I haven't confirmed with Willie Nelson, but we'll have a very nice cross-section. We're setting an what's the date of the organizational meeting?
Whoa, who'd you say?
Willie Nelson?
Willie Nelson. I apologize, Willie Ramsey. I apologize, Willie Nelson. Good God Almighty, the man can sing. I apologize.
That
But
organizational meeting will be August the 6th.
so August the 6th, we'll have that. We'll set what we're going to be reviewing, the parameters, et cetera, what we're seeking from it, and I'll report back to the board. But I want to let you know I'm moving on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Willie Nelson.
one thing, quick. Am I correct that the president has signed?
It's law.
Yes, it's law.
Good
It's
deal.
law.
Chairman,
This,
Chairman,
I mean,
may I-
I keep bantering this, but I know a lot of people in this audience and in public have looked at me with, green lights on with what I'm talking about. But I'm telling you, for this to be passed is an amazing, amazing piece.
Yes.
For Congress to do anything is amazing, but to pass this, it took the work of this. I mean, you're talking about Representative Palazzo and Scalise and Landry and all the people from everyone. I'll tell a funny story, and then I know we got to go, but when I was speaking to a congressman from Ohio, and he was like, Billy, we're with you, but we don't want to spend any more money in Louisiana. There was a lot, there was just friction all over the place you're from Ohio trying to figure out how to do it. But the gentleman told me stay close to Senator Landry because that woman will claw your eyes out to get the money. So it has been a very R&D thing, and it's actually been an amazing thing to watch. But thank our senators and our congressmen and the commissioners throughout the Panhandle, because they have fought like Trojans for this. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I had requested to appoint one to that committee.
We sent the letter. I got the email, all of your request, and I think you sent 3 folks in. All of those people have been sent letters.
We need to move on that.
Okay. I'd move as fast as I can. What's that?
Chairman, just one thing I forgot to let the board and the public know. Tonight's meeting, we have begun live streaming the board meeting. So if anyone cannot be here to participate, it's in a test phase right now, but you can go to our county website under latest news, and the very first item there is to link up to a live video stream of our board meetings. So that is a new availability for our public.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, dude.
I'd like to thank Dennis as well as Scott. They've worked really hard to get all of that done and have done a fantastic job.
Very good. All right, before we close, anyone from the public? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Crum, I had your, Mr. Crum, I apologize. Can you come on up? I apologize, Mr. Crum.
Sean Comer, West Highway 98, Port St. Joe. 2 things. You guys have been terribly successful recently in driving the beach-oriented tourist population down. The beach in front of my house and along from Mexico Beach to here has not been cleaned or groomed or anything. What that happens is that the people who have come here have gone to the beach and had a miserable time, and someplace between 2,000 and 4,000 people went home and told their neighbors what lousy beaches they have here in Gulf County. I don't think that's a good idea. The seaweed's piled up all over the place, the flies are all over the place, the chiggers are all over the place, and nobody's cleaning it.
Can I
Why
interrupt?
not?
Can I interrupt just a minute on that issue?
It's his time.
Yeah, this dog's time, and I'm sorry about this, but I got to clear this up. Did I just not hear the bed tax collection is up by 21 or 22%?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. He's talking about an earlier, that our bed tax is up 21%. He's justifying your argument.
I cannot see where our tourism is down when we just had a report of a 21% increase on our bed tax.
What he's alluding to, and pause his time, you're correct about, we've already discussed in this board, the current arrangement that we have with our beach, we used to do it internally, then we outsourced it. And it's not functioning very well. You know, they've got time constraints. They try to cover his area, they try to cover our area. But what we can do with that, Mr. Cromer, is have TDC review it. We are asking for recommendations for new contracts or new arrangements because it's not working.
No, when you're driving people away.
I agree.
And the women sit on there and swat the gnats and this sort of stuff. It doesn't do good for the women. The other thing I'd like to point out to you, I'm sort of going to rain on your parade, I think. The Restore Act, it's highly unlikely anybody will ever see a dime. There are three things in the way of the Restore Act. One of them is the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, and the other is the Eighth. U.S. government cannot impose a fine. They cannot. It just can't be done. They have to go to court, and they're going to lose. Because the fact of the matter is that BP has, to me, apparently anticipated this coming. And my guess is that BP is perfectly well prepared to defend itself in court from any additional fines. Not only that, but the Justice Department is going to pursue this on the statute side of federal law so that the trial will be subject to appeal, right? And so forth. And so this process could take forever. And if I were you, I would be very wary of making any commitments until you find out exactly what BP is going to do, because the U.S. Constitution protects them from the United States government just like it protects you and me. And the chances of this going through are somewhere, in my opinion, between remote and non-existent. BP spent a lot of money so far. I think BP can show that they have spent as much money as the total assessed valuation of the property affected by the spill. And if they go into court with those kind of numbers, there's going to be some serious problems here. So my suggestion to you is, gentlemen, one, read the Constitution, and two, pay attention to what's going on, because it isn't going to be that simple.
Thank you, sir.
There's no free lunch.
Appreciate that very much.
Mr. Chair, respond a little bit on the beach cleaning. Don and I many times have called the contractor. While it's not perfect, they've responded just about on the next day basis. We actually, after her tropical storm, Debbie, had county crews down there cleaning the beaches and all those kinds of things. So we are doing an awful lot of things that are proactive in trying to make sure that the tourists enjoy themselves. And I can tell you, over the past week and a half, I've been there on a daily basis, sometimes 2 and 3 times. The tourists are there, and the tourists are flooded to our community, and the tourism numbers are up. And there's a lot of success stories out there. And
I agree. I think
the sky is not falling.
What I'm saying is not to impeach them per se. The issue is it's not working for me because you have to call that kind of thing. But we need more. We know when June grass is going to be here. You know, we know when we've got the weekends coming up. And we'll ask Jennifer, I think, to stay on top of it more. But we've got to have a better system where it's a constant scenario, because you just can't. I mean, we're always play catch up. You know. But anyway, we'll move forward. Anyone else from the public?
Chairman, I know
Yes,
Mr. Carter wanted to say something, but while he was coming up, I just wanted to note Ms. Jenkins and Mr. Butler are having actually a meeting with county staff tomorrow, and one of the topics of that is the continued beach cleanups and nourishment, how they're going to modify those. So just want to report that to you all.
Thank you.
I'll get to him. I'm just getting the phone.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Carter.
All right, Mr. Chairman, to the rest of the board, I just want to give you all an update on our extension program. Well, first, I'm Roy Lee Carter. I'm the Extension Director for Gulf County /Gulf County, University of Florida. I want to give you an update on our extension program, mainly our camping program for this year. We had about 12 kids that was involved in the our horse program in Weewaw. Very successful program. We did it right there at T.L. James Park for 6 days. And we had last week our regular 4-H camp program at Camp Tempucci. I don't know if y'all been over there or not. That's in Niceville. And we carried 80 kids from here to Camp Tempucci. That's quite a number, and I would say we probably have as strong a 4-H camping program as any county in North Florida. It was 17 counties in our district, and like I said, we probably do as much for kids as any other county in North Florida. As I speak, we are getting ready to send 7 kids to our state horse show that qualified at district back in April. On the way with the sheriff, they're headed to Tampa when they'll start competing tomorrow, and they'll be down there until Friday. 7 kids from a small county this size, in other words, going to a state horse show is extremely good. So in other words, I just want to applaud what, my assistant who is Melanie Taylor, and we have a program assistant from FAMU, Louise Jones, have done with our 4-H program. We are looking at doing some other things. We also have a summer garden program. We were collaborating with Wake Forest Board, WIG, and we're doing a summer garden program, which is fairly unique. I work 1 day a week over in Northport St. Joe with a group, and also I have a small group in Weewa that we are working with. And like I said, that's a unique program. Nobody else in the state of Florida is doing this as far as a garden program with kids. So I just want to thank y'all for y'all support and what you have done for us in the past. I know we normally have a low profile, but no news is normally good news. In other words, we don't come and beg or whatever because we know what kind of shape the county is in. I appreciate all y'all support. Now, are there any rumors or anything we can do for y'all?
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Mr. Chairman, so many people don't know what all that Mr. Carter does. And when he leaves here, there's a good chance he probably won't be going home. He may have to check on someone's animal before he gets home. But this county is so fortunate to have someone like Mr. Carter to carry the heart he has for our youth and our children and the time he spends with them. It's just, it's amazing. And, both ends of the county, here they have a wonderful garden program here. And North End with the horses and all. But again, Roy, personally, thank you so much for what you do for our community and our counties here. You really earn your money. You sure do.
Mr. Carter, too, I want to make a comment, too. The University of Florida does a great job with the Association of Counties and the small county.
Right.
They continue to sponsor the educational component that we have for, CCC and the ACC program for county commissioners. Again, funny story, he talked to me about going to the Natural Resource and Leadership Institute back when I first got elected, which was one of the most valuable things I've gone through. I thought I was going to tree hugger school, but it was a little bit different. But Burrell passed away, as you know.
Right.
But we did recognize he and his wife at the Florida Association of Counties and the University of Florida for the work and commitment that you guys give us into our communities and the educational component you bring throughout the state. So thank you.
I appreciate all the comments. I get them back. All the comments y'all make when you go to those meetings, they come back. To me, so I appreciate
Oh, yeah, and Dr. Klauser said tell you hello.
Right.
Okay.
Rod's a good guy.
One thing we need some help on, Mr. Butler, is that building we're in is leaking real bad, and we have some mold in that building, and that's a concern. Okay, so I know you've given us 2 dehumidifiers to help keep it dry, and we have 2 those dehumidifiers running. If you run it 8 hours, they will pour 2 gallons of water out in those buildings, so you got a lot of moisture. Moisture, in other words, perpetrates mold, and mold is toxic and serious business.
Without benefit of a good budget, we have no choice. We have water pouring in the building around all the windows, and we're going through and taking the windows out and doing what we have to do, and in the end, we'll waterproof the walls. Yeah. That's a double width wall, brick, 2 bricks side by side, and take the windows out, and water is actually pouring down in between the wall. It has got into it. So without the benefit of a budget, it's not one of those things we have an option to not do. We've got to do it, otherwise we're going to lose the building.
I was there this morning with maintenance and moved the work crew in, and they were there working this morning, trying to prep the building for this sealer that's to go on it. But they were there.
Okay, I just want to make I know you're working hard, but it's a major concern, especially for the employees, and mold can be serious business. So in other words, we need to do the best we can to kind of, whatever's necessary was to kind of curb this thing. Like I said, I appreciate all your support. It's a joy working with y'all, okay? And if anything I can do for you, just let me know.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
I think you had something, Mr. Smiley?
Yes, I forgot to give out a special thanks, and I want to apologize for forgetting to do so, but I want to give Ms. Gail Alsabrook with the downtown redevelopment. She applied for a grant for District 4, $212,000 to do some improvement on MLK. And I just want to give her special thanks for working with us and leading that grant to help us get that money to do that work, because it's some work that's long time coming. I'm 46 years old, and I never seen no work did on that street. So I just want to tell Ms. Gail, thank you for the work that you did.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?